Discover the heartwarming letter that changed 1 million lives and brought a millionaire to tears. In the quaint town of Maplewood, the majestic splendor of the countryside wrapped around its people like a warm hug. Fields of sunshine-drenched corn danced in the balmy summer breeze, and the scent of freshly baked pies filled the air, a familiar and comforting backdrop to everyday life. But among the cheerful greetings exchanged on porches lined with flowers, one woman fought a silent battle. A determined single mother named Sarah. At 32, Sarah balanced 3 exhausting jobs to provide a better life for her 2 young sons, Jake and Ben. She wiped tables during the day at the local diner, scrubbed toilets at night, and took on freelance jobs, her fingers flying across the keyboard while her boys slept. Every dollar earned was a step toward building a future her late husband, an honorable veteran, would have been proud of. Yet, amid the smiles and sunshine, whispers of disdain followed her. The wealthier families in town saw her not as a hard-working mother but as just another person struggling to get by. One sweltering afternoon, seeking an escape from her burdens, Sarah stumbled into the local library. Rows of books towered above her, each filled with stories yet to be told. As she traced her fingers along the spines, she found an old tome long forgotten. When she opened it, out slipped a yellowed letter, crinkled and worn. The words within spoke of resilience, of community support in the toughest of times, echoing the sentiment that heartache could be overcome when people came together. Tears glimmered in her eyes as she read. This letter wasn't just ink on paper. It ignited a flicker of hope in her heavy heart. With her dreams long buried under responsibility, Sarah figured it was time for the people in Maplewood to hear a message they'd never forgotten, the importance of leaning on one another. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously. It makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With determination in her heart, Sarah organized a community potluck, inviting families to share not only their favorite dishes, but their stories, struggles, and strengths. When the town's millionaire, Mr. Thompson, caught wind of her plans, disdain flashed in his eyes. What will that accomplish? He scoffed. His reaction stung deeply, but Sarah pressed on, undaunted. As fate would have it, a personal crisis soon darkened Mr. Thompson's doorstep, and doubt crept into his mind. His world came crashing down, forcing him to confront the truth of his privileged existence and the struggles of the simple folks around him. The potluck day arrived, filled with anticipation. Tension simmered as Sarah stood tall before her neighbors, including Mr. Thompson, unyielding. She challenged not only his biases, but the very fabric of their small town, her voice cutting through the atmosphere like a beacon. Just as he prepared to respond, the creaking door opened, and a mysterious stranger stepped inside, bringing with them secrets that could alter their fates forever. What would this new arrival reveal? And how would it reshape the fragile notion of community in Maplewood? The moment the stranger entered, a hush fell over the room. Heads turned, and conversation halted. The figure stood still for a beat, before stepping into the warm glow of the potluck lights. Clad in a simple blue shirt and jeans, they didn't fit the mold of what one might expect in the company of Maplewood's most affluent. Carrying a large, tattered bag slung over one shoulder, the stranger's presence was both unsettling and intriguing. Sarah's heart raced. She had begun to speak about the importance of community, but all eyes were now drawn to this unexpected guest. The muted whispers of the crowd turned into a collective curiosity, each person wondering who this newcomer could be and what this moment meant for the potluck that Sarah had poured her heart into. "Excuse me?" the stranger spoke, their voice calm yet firm. "I'm Ella." With a gentle smile, she gestured to her bag. "I come bearing gifts, but more importantly, a story." Mr. Thompson crossed his arms, skepticism etched on his face. "And why would we want to hear from you?" he challenged, narrow-eyed. "Because sometimes," Ella replied, "it takes a fresh perspective to remind us of what we've lost or forgotten." She paused, looking around at the mingling families, the plates piled high with food, the laughter echoing in the room. "I spent years running away from my own community. I thought it was easier to be alone. But without connection, life becomes a shadow of what it could be." It was Sarah's turn now. She recognized the same weight of loneliness that clouded her own heart. "Please share your story," she urged, her voice steady, encouraging the honesty that Ella had invited. Ella took a breath, revealing with soft sincerity that she had once lived in Maplewood. Long before she had wandered into distant cities seeking ambition, she had felt the warmth of this town. The memories flooded back to her, playing in the fields, attending community events, the very same events Sarah was trying to revive with this potluck. She spoke of how, in her quest for success, she had lost sight of the meaning that lay in those connections. "I thought I needed fortune and fame," she continued, her voice wavering slightly, only to find that all I desired was to come back to people who cared. I lost friends along the way, people who would have gladly offered support. I neglected those matters, and when I needed help..." Ella's gaze fell, the weight of her past evident. There was no one left. Heads nodded among the crowd. They could understand. Sarah could feel the swell of unity. Mr. Thompson shifted his weight, visibly impacted. For the first time, the facade of indifference began to crack. "The truth is," Ella concluded, lifting her chin with renewed vigor, "reaching out is the strongest act of courage. It's putting aside pride for love. I traveled miles to return not just to share my food with you, but to remind you that together we can lift each other up. The strength of community isn't in wealth, it's in the bonds we forge." As Ella looked around, the room erupted into a mix of applause and murmurs of agreement. Sarah felt something shift within her. Hope blossomed. Maybe this potluck was turning out to be more than a meal. It was a revival. And at the center stood Sarah, a single mother, hand in hand with a stranger, changing the narrative of Maplewood one conversation at a time. Just then, Mr. Thompson surprised everyone by stepping forward. The sincerity in his eyes conveyed a personal reckoning. "I have to admit, I've been wrong about all of this." His voice wavered, exposed for the first time. "And I want to make it right." What would Mr. Thompson's admission spark? Would it finally heal the divide in their community, or would his words break down an already fragile trust? Everyone waited, breathless, for what would happen next. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, the whispers in the room hush, hanging heavily in the air. Sarah could see the lines on his face, deep and drawn, marked by years of responsibility and a hint of regret. He looked around, meeting the curious gazes of their neighbors, the old friends, and the nodding heads of those who had come to support the potluck. It was as if he recognized that this moment was more than about him. It was about all of them, together. "I've always believed that success was measured by what you achieve, what you have," Mr. Thompson continued, his voice steadying. "But I stand here realizing that the real measure of our lives lies in our connections, the people we can call our own." He glanced at Sarah, a hint of something softer in his hardened eyes. "I've shut myself off for too long." A troop of nervous murmurs rippled through the crowd, blending with the comforting aromas of casseroles and desserts set out on the tables. Ella smiled encouragingly at Mr. Thompson, her presence helping to ease the tension that had gripped a community for too long. I've ignored you all, thinking I was above the pain of my past," he stammered, almost breaking. "But my heart is heavy with the weight of knowing I pushed away the very people who care the most." His gaze fell to the ground, shame saturating his tone. "I want to change that." A collective breath was drawn in the room, anticipation crackling like static electricity. The crowd was shifting in their seats, an unspoken camaraderie forming amongst them. It felt, for the first time in years, like something profound could emerge from this gathering. I remember when my daughter was struggling, Mr. Thompson went on, his voice softening. She felt disconnected, isolated from her friends. And I failed to see that reaching out, opening myself up, it could have changed everything. Instead, I doubled down, thinking I could fix it alone. He swallowed hard, his throat betraying him. Sarah could see tears welling up in some of the others' eyes. She felt one slipping down her own cheek, but quickly wiped it away, wanting to appear strong, determined. Ella came back to remind us all that it doesn't matter where we come from. What matters is where we're going, together. Mr. Thompson finished, lifting his chin to face the crowd with a newfound vulnerability. It's time for me to build bridges rather than walls. The emotion hung thick like the scent of fresh-baked bread. There was a softness in the air, a gentle glow expanding among the people. Sarah could feel the crowd reaching back toward him, a wave of shared experience washing over them. In the back, an elderly woman raised her hand, her voice trembling. We felt that distance too, Mr. Thompson. It's time we share our stories and support one another. We cannot go on like this. Murmurs of agreement echoed back, carried on the uncertain waves of newfound hope. The mood shifted, unexpected smiles were shared, and people began to encourage one another, exchanging their own tales of misconnection and solitude. As conversations grew louder and laughter began to break through the walls erected by indifference, Ella took a step back, observing the unity blooming around her like wildflowers across the fields of Maplewood. She understood that her mission had not just been about sharing her story. It was about sparking the courage in others to open up. Just then, Sarah caught Mr. Thompson's eye and felt a jolt of inspiration. "Okay, Maplewood, let's not stop here," she said, raising her voice above the growing excitement. "Let's share our stories tonight. Who's in?" The hands started to go up, some timidly, some with enthusiastic gestures. Questions began to bubble up. Who would start? What stories could they share? And in that moment, Sarah knew they were on the brink of something substantial. They were coming together, no longer the division of classes and status, but rather as one community with untold stories waiting to be shared. But would they all be ready to open their hearts and truly listen? Would each person find the courage to speak their truth? As she looked around, the warmth of connection filled her, and with faith blooming in her heart, she silently prayed for the strength of vulnerability that might soon transform Maplewood. The room vibrated with anticipation as eyes turned back to Mr. Thompson. What would he say next? Would he take the lead and share his own story of regret, or perhaps even offer a heartfelt gesture to begin healing the divides in the community? Mr. Thompson hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like the thick aroma of the potluck feast filling the room. It was as if time slowed as his eyes darted around, searching for the words that could bridge the chasm he had built over the years. The room buzzed with anticipation, hearts and ears open, ready to receive whatever he had to share. Inhaling deeply, he finally spoke. "What I'm about to tell you is a story from my past. A story I've hidden for too long. A story about the power of a simple letter." He took a step closer to the gathering, locking eyes with Sarah, and the others slowly began to lean in, transfixed. "It was years ago, after my daughter had left for college," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "She wrote me a note, a letter full of words I had been too proud to hear. She told me how isolated she had felt during her teenage years, how my absence during her big moments drove a wedge between us." He paused, choking back emotion. I brushed it off at the time, convinced I was too busy building a career to pay attention. But it was that little letter that shattered my illusion of success. A hush fell over the potluck crowd. The warmth of the dishes on the table faded as they hung on to his every word. Sarah could see the churning regret etched on his face, the realization that he had lost out on precious moments with his daughter. Later, I read that letter over and over. He continued softly. Each time, it felt like a personal reckoning. It showed me a path not only to her heart, but to my own. Ella shifted beside Sarah, her eyes glistening with shared understanding. Such raw honesty was not common, but here, in this enclosed space of friends and neighbors, it felt safe. It felt necessary. I began to write letters of my own, Mr. Thompson confessed, his gaze now sweeping over the crowd, as if challenging each person to do the same. Not just to her, but to the people I had neglected. To all of you. Every letter contained apologies, stories, and invitations to reconnect. It was freeing. Almost like shedding a skin I didn't know I was wearing. Murmurs of support rippled through the group. Sarah felt the tightening in her chest ease as hope unfurled within her. What I realized, my friends, is that vulnerability is strength, he said, now with quiet intensity. And it's never too late to start again, to reach out, to mend the bridges we've allowed to fall away. Just as he finished, a young man stood up at the back, his voice strong yet tentative. Mr. Thompson, I'm not sure I can find the right words, but I've been listening and... He hesitated, searching for courage. Can I share my own story? I'm ready to open up, if it can help others. The room collectively held its breath, a charged connection flowing among them, an invisible thread pulling them together. Absolutely, Mr. Thompson responded, his smile infectious. We're all ears. As the young man stepped forward, a wave of excitement washed over the group. People were ready to embrace their truths, one story at a time. And as laughter mingled with tears, Sarah sunk deeper into the warmth of the moment. Would this ripple effect of shared narratives touch the hearts of everyone? Could Maplewood become a place where honesty flourished, where stories of pain transformed into tales of healing? The clock on the wall ticked. The night was still young, and as one voice started to rise, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what would unfold next. The room buzzed with a new kind of energy, the young man's nervousness hanging in the air like the scent of baked goods. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly as he spoke. My name's Jason, he introduced, his voice shaking, and I've never told anyone this before. With each word he shared, the atmosphere shifted. He spoke of feeling invisible in a family that seemed so put together. There were always celebrations for my little sister, he recalled, a bitter smile on his face. I'd watch her shine at birthday parties or dance recitals while I stood in the corner, just blending in. I began to think I was just the background to everyone else's lives. The faint sound of clinking dishes faded, the crowd leaning in closer, captivated. There was something raw about his honesty, something that struck a chord with every person present. Sarah felt her heart ache for him, remembering her own childhood moments of feeling unseen, like a whisper in a crowded room. Then one day, I received a letter from my grandmother, he continued, eyes glazing with the memory. She wrote to me about her own struggles growing up. She told me I was just as important as everyone else, that my story mattered too. That little piece of paper became my lifeline. I still pull it out when I need reminding of who I am and who I can be. Mr. Thompson's eyes glistened with pride as he nodded at Jason, encouraging him silently. The warmth in the room grew thicker, wrapping around them like a cozy blanket. Jason's voice steadied, fueled by the support surrounding him. He continued, After reading that letter, I started writing my own. First, to my sister, then to my parents. It felt like finally stepping into the light after years of hiding in the shadows. Sarah sensed something beautiful was unfurling in that room. He was doing more than just sharing. He was confronting the fears that had haunted him for years. I realized ultimately that we all have stories that deserve to be heard. The more I wrote, the more I could breathe again. Ella, still at Sarah's side, nodded, her expression lost in thought. She was piecing together her own hidden stories, realizing the power of words had the potential to heal. As Jason finished, the room erupted in applause, a collective cheer of acknowledgement and appreciation. People were moved. Sarah caught several teary eyes waving with encouragement, and even the kitchen seemed quieter, as if the very walls were absorbing the weight of their emotions. "What you shared tonight, Jason," Mr. Thompson said, wiping a tear from his cheek, "is a gift. You've opened the door for so many of us." With enthusiasm bubbling, Sarah squeezed Ella's hand. "I think it's happening. Each story shared brings us closer, doesn't it?" "Yes," Ella replied, her voice thick with emotion. "It feels like we're all connected in a way we never knew." Suddenly, a hush fell again. The energy shifted as Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "My friends," he said thoughtfully, "what if we took it one step further? What if every letter we write tonight could shape our community?" Jason nodded, the spark igniting in others' eyes. Ideas floated around the room, plans to engage with everyone in Maplewood, something more than just conversations at a potluck. As the excitement spread, Sarah felt her insides buzzing. She could hardly contain herself. What might they discover together in the journey of healing? Could this night truly transform Maplewood into a canvas for something greater? "Let's start tonight," Jason said earnestly, his voice ringing with the urgency of new beginnings. "Who's in?" Just as the crowd began discussing ideas, Sarah's heart raced. As she stepped up, her intention clear and strong, she smiled, ready to join this unfolding journey of connection. But what she didn't expect was the voice that would soon rise among them, a voice filled with anguish that echoed a very different tale. The room held its breath as a new voice broke through the energy, quaking with tension. I want to share something too." The speaker stepped forward, a young woman named Mia. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear and regret. Sarah instinctively stepped back, sensing the shift. Mia's voice wavered. "My story isn't one of triumph. I don't have a letter from a wise grandmother or heartwarming moments to share." She paused, tears pooling in her eyes. "My past is darker." A collective gasp filled the room, the warmth immediately cooling. They were drawn in, attentive to the heaviness that hung between Mia's words. "I lost my brother 2 years ago," she began, her breath hitching. "He was my best friend. We were inseparable, but I got lost in my own world. I took him for granted. One day he didn't come home." The words fell like stones, each one hitting heavy against the hearts of those listening. Sarah covered her mouth, feeling a shared sorrow ripple through the crowd. The room felt still, yet charged, the urgency of Mia's pain filling every corner. "I never said goodbye," Mia continued, her trembling voice echoing in the silence. "I buried myself in my phone, in social media. I thought I'd talk to him later, but that later never came. And now—" She paused, drawing in a breath as if it could solidify her heart. "I'm left with nothing but regret and what-ifs." Eyes glistened with tears, and murmurs of empathy arose. Jason stood transfixed, his welcoming demeanor shifting into one of shared grief. Ella turned to Sarah, her fingers interlacing tightly with Sarah's. "This is so different. It's like real life." Mia wiped her eyes, determination creeping back into her voice. "But I'm learning to honor him. I started writing letters to him. Letters filled with everything I never got to say. I tell him about my day, my struggles, and the weight of him being gone from my life." Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. The thought of writing to someone who would never read the words echoed painfully, yet there was a flicker of hope in Mia's actions. "And I want to do more," Mia declared, her voice growing stronger. "I want to encourage people to write letters not just out of happiness, but to also express our pain, our fears, our dreams, and our regrets. We shouldn't wait for moments to be taken away." The energy surged back as people nodded, processing the depth of Mia's words. Once again, the sense of community swelled. Fellow burdens were recognized. Voices lifted to comfort one another. Sarah couldn't help but applaud, her heart achingly moved by the vulnerability Mia had just shared. Mr. Thompson stepped up beside Mia, placing a supporting hand on her shoulder. "You've opened our hearts tonight, Mia. This is what community is about. We carry our stories together and help one another heal." Excitement sparked in the crowd, but it wasn't just for Mia's bravery. The room buzzed with fresh ideas, different paths of intimacy unfolding, as plans emerged to create a community letter project that encompassed both joy and sorrow. A sense of purpose filled the air. Jason and Mia found camaraderie in their stories, heroes in their own right. Sarah's heart raced. They were digging deeper into connections than she ever imagined, but with that realization came the unsettling shadows of untold stories. Just as a laughter broke through the tension, shattering the sorrowful reverberations left by Mia, a deep voice boomed from the back of the room. "What if we dive even deeper?" The room turned as a man stepped forward, his face etched with the severity of an unspoken truth. What happens when the letters we write reveal secrets we're all afraid to confront? The question hung in the air, heavy and intriguing, as the eyes of the room locked onto him, igniting the next wave of curiosity and emotion. The weight of the man's question hung above them like a storm cloud, thickening the air in the room. Nobody spoke. They were still processing Mia's vulnerability, and now this fresh stirring. Sarah's gaze swept over the others, searching for clues in their faces. Each one was a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. What secrets lay buried within them? Mia took a small step back, still in the spotlight, but clearly shaken by the shift in tone. I think that's the point," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to confront our fears, not just share nice memories. It's about facing the whole story." A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathering as people nodded, their expressions turning serious. Jason's brow furrowed, and he leaned slightly toward Mia. "What do you mean by confronting fears?" he encouraged softly, trying to bring clarity to the conversation. Mia took a breath, gathering her resolve. "I mean, we all carry things inside, right? Things that hurt us or make us feel ashamed. What if these letters become a way to express those darker sides? It could be scary to confront, but also freeing." Sarah's heart raced. She thought of her own hidden fears and insecurities. Would writing down her troubles on paper really help? The idea felt daunting but appealing at the same time. The man who had posed the question stepped closer, his gaze scanning the group intently. "You mean our regrets, our mistakes?" He paused, letting his words sink in. What if we uncovered things we never wanted to admit to ourselves or others? Silence settled in as they all reflected on the gravity of his proposition. A few people shifted nervously in their seats. Ella broke the tension, raising her hand slightly. "I don't know if I'm ready to confront things like that. It's hard enough sharing the nice stuff." Her voice trembled slightly, exposing her vulnerability. Others echoed similar sentiments, sharing their fears of exposing wounds too raw to revisit. But Sarah, feeling bold, spoke up. "But what if by writing those letters we could heal? What if we could share our burdens, knowing we're not alone?" The man nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Exactly. It's about courage. There's strength in vulnerability. The act itself could be transformative." Mia's eyes brightened with understanding. "Yes, we could turn our letters into a collective narrative, something that holds both our joys and our sorrows, a tapestry of life itself." A wave of excitement rippled through the room, mixing with trepidation. Everyone began to stir with ideas, the air electric with possibility. Sarah felt alive, her heart raced with the thrill of embracing the unknown. But as enthusiasm spread, a darker thought seeped back into the corners of her mind. What if confronting those secrets just brought more pain? What if the letters unleashed demons that couldn't be put back in their boxes? Before she could voice her doubts, Jason stood, raising his hand for silence. Let's commit to this. Let's write our letters and see where it takes us. Don't worry about sharing at first. Just start with honesty. His gaze softened as it swept the room, inclusive and uplifting. Sarah felt moved. The way Jason spoke with such conviction and warmth made her believe it could work. But just as they began to plan their approach, the man with the haunting question stepped back into view, intense and focused. But remember, once those letters are written, the truths we uncover will change us. Are we truly ready for that? His question lingered in the air, static and charged. As their eyes darted to one another, the weight of unspoken secrets crackled around them, leaving them on the brink of revelation. What would they discover about themselves in the days to come? What truths lay just beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed? As the room held its collective breath, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental, something that would challenge every fiber of their being. But what if unearthing those buried secrets changed everything? A wave of uncertainty washed over the group, intertwining with the fading excitement. The air felt charged, thick with anticipation and fear alike. Sarah's gaze fell to her trembling hands, her thoughts spiraling. What if the letters revealed even deeper darkness? What if they became a weight too heavy to bear? Jason's voice broke her reverie, calling them back to the present. Let's give ourselves a timeline, he suggested, his voice steady. We meet again in a week. Each of us should write our letters by then. He glanced around, gauging reactions. Some faces glowed with resolve while others remained clouded with doubt. Mia's eyes sparkled, energized by the prospect. I'll do it, she said firmly. If it means facing what's holding me back, I'll take that step. The courage in her voice prompted nods from others. Ella still seemed hesitant but spoke up. I'll try. I'm scared, but maybe, just maybe it could help. Determination began to spread, like the sun breaking through the clouds after a storm. Sarah felt a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. She echoed Ella's sentiment, her voice gaining strength. Me too. I want to embrace this, no matter how scary it feels. As the first sparks of resolution ignited in the room, the man stepped forward again, quieter now, yet still commanding attention. This could change everything for all of you, he said. Just remember, it might expose parts of yourself you didn't know existed. A shiver ran through Sarah. The idea of discovering unknown pain was daunting, almost paralyzing. Yet, living in fear felt even worse. They all looked around, each of them facing a multitude of questions. What did they really want the letters to reveal? What did they hope to find on the other side of their fears? Jason lifted his chin. Whatever you decide to write, it needs to be honest, no sugarcoating. This is our chance to set those truths free. There was a murmur of understanding, the reality of the task beginning to settle in. Sarah thought about the letters long into the evening, imagining each word spilling out, raw and unfiltered. Later that night, in the stillness of her bedroom, she turned on her desk lamp and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. Staring at it felt like staring down a precipice. What had she buried so deep that she dared not speak it? As her pen hovered above the paper, a flicker of doubt whispered in the back of her mind. What if this didn't lead to healing and instead brought agony to the surface? Frustrated, Sarah shoved the paper away and leaned back in her chair. She needed to approach this with honesty, but the thought made her heart race in fear. She was terrified. Would this letter reveal not just her troubles, but all her inadequacies? The next few days passed amidst a haze of anxiety and reluctant excitement. They all felt it, the slow tension building up with each tick of the clock leading to their next meeting. Finally, the day arrived. Sarah walked into the familiar room, her heart drumming a rapid beat. She wasn't alone. Everyone looked nervous yet resolute, holding their letters, a bundle of courage and vulnerability. She couldn't predict how the day would unfold, but she sensed a shift was coming. "Okay, are we ready?" Jason asked, standing before them, glancing at each participant. It was a simple question, but underneath it lay immense weight. If they were ready, then they were all primed to not just share stories, but to unveil the layers buried deep inside. As Sarah's fingers curled around her letter, she felt that familiar pang of fear rise up, but alongside it was a glimmer of exhilaration. What if this was the moment that changed everything? Everyone in the room held their breath, poised on the verge of discovery. What would happen once they opened their hearts? Would sharing their fears unite them, or would it pull them apart? Sarah met Jason's eyes, and for a moment, she saw something in him, a promise of understanding, of acceptance. It ignited her courage. As she took a deep breath, she was ready to leap into the unknown, ready to confront her truth. But in that moment of vulnerability, she couldn't help but wonder, what if facing their fears had consequences none of them were prepared for? The room felt electric as the group prepared to dive into their truths. Sarah took a moment to breathe, letting the energy wash over her. She glanced around, eyes landing on Mia, who was already shifting nervously from foot to foot, clutching her letter tightly. Ella sat poised with her paper resting on her knee, her brow furrowed in concentration. It was evident they all carried the weight of anticipation along with their own burdens. "Who wants to go first?" Jason asked, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but the quiver underneath revealed he too felt the emotional tide ready to surge. Mia's hand shot up, surprising even herself. Everyone turned to look at her, and she felt the flush creep up her neck. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. She stood up, taking a few shaky steps forward, her heart racing. She took a deep breath, her palms damp. "This letter is about my fear of failure," she began, her voice trembling but determined. "I've always felt like I had to be perfect, to make everyone happy. But honestly, I'm scared. Scared that I'm never going to be enough." As she spoke, her emotion built, voice cracking, tears glistening in her eyes. The vulnerability hanging in the air shifted the atmosphere of the room. Sarah felt her own heart swell with empathy. With every word, Mia let go of the pressure that had kept her trapped. The others leaned in closer, hanging on her every syllable. "It's exhausting pretending to be someone I'm not. I want to be free to be myself." When she finished, silence enveloped the room. Then, one by one, they began to clap gently. It felt like a collective sigh of relief, like the weight of unspoken truths began to lift. Ella stood next, nervously biting her lip. "I guess it's my turn," she said, fumbling with her letter. "I wrote about feeling invisible, like no one really sees me." Her voice wavered, but she pressed on, revealing how she often felt overlooked, even in crowded spaces. "I crave connection, but I'm terrified of rejection." Her confession struck a chord within everyone, and tears formed in more than a few eyes. The camaraderie was palpable. They were breaking down barriers, and as her words hung in the air, Sarah felt her own throat tighten with the weight of her own truth. Jason stepped forward next. "My letter," he began, hesitating for a brief moment. "I wrote about my fear of being vulnerable. I've had to be the strong one for so long. But the truth is..." He paused, inhaling deeply. "I'm tired. I want to open up, but I'm scared of what it might mean." Tension lifted, replaced by a collective understanding. Each person was shedding layers, and that made room for Sarah to feel her own truth bubbling up inside her. The urge to speak began to claw its way to the surface, but she hesitated. Would her words resonate? Would they feel comfortable with her reality? Finally, she met their gaze. It was time to take the leap. I I've been writing about my fear of being abandoned, she managed, her eyes scanning the room for support. I lost someone close to me a while back, and ever since I panic at the thought of losing anyone else. The silence that followed felt heavy, yet supportive, like a warm embrace. Sarah felt the tension release as she laid her truth bare, realizing this was a safe space. As they moved through their shares, a sense of relief washed over Sarah. They were all struggling with their own battles, yet the act of vulnerability was forging an unspoken bond. But just as everyone started to feel lighter, a knock interrupted the session. A stranger entered the room, someone they didn't know. An alarming wave of uncertainty crashed over them again. Who was this person? What did they want? Sarah's heart raced once more. Had they inadvertently opened the door to something they hadn't prepared for? This stranger carried a whole new set of questions, and she couldn't help but wonder, what if this was the very moment that turned their healing into chaos? The stranger stepped into the room, hesitation hanging in the air like fog, thickening the atmosphere all over again. Eyes turned, every gaze probing, weighing the newcomer. Her hair was messily pulled back, and her clothes seemed to tell stories of long journeys. Sarah felt an immediate twinge of apprehension, but also a flicker of curiosity. Hi, the stranger said, her voice shaky but genuine. I'm Lucy. She paused, taking a tentative step forward. I heard you mention letters, and I'm not sure how to say this, but I've been searching for something, and it brought me here. The room buzzed with muted whispers. Sarah could feel an electric charge in the air. Who was this woman? What was she searching for? I've been writing letters too, Lucy continued, her voice softer now, almost breaking as if the words themselves were a release. But they weren't meant for anyone alive. Gasps echoed softly around the group. Sarah's heart raced. There was an understanding in the way others leaned in, captivated by raw honesty, yet apprehensive. Lucy drew in a shaky breath. But through writing to my late brother, I discovered what I was missing. Connection. And just being able to say what I needed to say. It brought the dead back to life in a way. Tears glimmered in her eyes. I came here hoping to find people who understood that grief isn't just something you move on from. It's something you carry. Suddenly, more than ever, Sarah felt the weight of their stories crashing together, merging. Lucy's journey intersected painfully with Mia's, echoing the struggles of loss, loneliness, and longing. I thought I was alone in this, Lucy continued, her voice gaining strength. But hearing that you all are writing letters, it just made sense. We all have something to say. Whether it's to those we've lost, or the ones still here. It's about connection more than anything else. As her words sank in, the room felt alive, pulsating with shared experience. Sarah looked around at the faces, people nodding slowly, their expressions shifting, morphing into something deeper. Recognition. Let's open the floor, Jason suggested, breaking the silence that felt so charged. What if Lucy joined our circle? We could all share what we've been writing. We could let her in. There was a moment of hesitation, a collective breath held tightly. Then, Mia spoke up, her heart swelling with compassion. Yes, let her share. We can't turn away from each other tonight. We're all in this together, after all. With hesitant but hopeful smiles, they gestured for Lucy to take a seat with them. It was refreshing, exhilarating, realizing that vulnerability invited more vulnerability, creating pathways to healing. Lucy nodded gratefully, her vulnerable smile spanning her tired face. I just want to be part of something. Anything, she said, her heart laid bare. One by one, they began sharing again. Sarah felt it, the brightening energy, the connections forming with each story. Lucy found her voice amid the noise, a voice filled with pain but also with strength, reminding them all of their shared humanity. I didn't think grief would tie me down in such a profound way, Lucy said, her words interspersed with tears. Writing to him. It opens a door to healing. The act of confronting my feelings has led me here, searching for others who feel the same. A wave of understanding washed over the group, draping them in empathy. They all saw the thread connecting them, a tapestry woven from love, loss, fear, and hope. Let me share with you what I used to say in my letters, Lucy said, her confidence blooming, eyes glistening with tears. I would pour out each moment, each memory, giving him life through my words. No matter how dark it felt, it became my anchor. And I want all of us to feel that weight lifted too. We can honor our connections through vulnerability. As voices mingled, Lucy's story started to weave into their own letters, the pain in her words echoing in their souls. Sarah felt a cathartic wave wash over her. It was like those hidden shadows were being pulled into the light. "I'm ready," Mia exclaimed, the flame of hope reigniting in her spirit. Let's write more letters. Not just letters to those we miss or memories we cherish, but also to those secrets we've kept buried that need an outlet. Let's face our truths together. Cheers of agreement resonated. It was an invitation to an endless cycle of connection. And as Sarah sat, ready, no longer alone in her fears, she realized this gathering was becoming more than healing. It was a rebirth into their community. In this moment, with laughter and tears melding beautifully, one thing was clear. Their adventures into vulnerability would not just change them. This collective journey could change Maplewood itself. So, as they held hands in solidarity, Sarah, along with Lucy and the others, beckoned the community into this transformative journey. Together, they lifted their hopes high like stars in a midnight sky, ready to shine brightly, an unwavering testament of courage and love. And as the night unfolded, it became evident. Each letter, each story, was a stitch in the fabric of their shared humanity. If you felt the heartbeats behind these words and you believe that stories can change lives, now is the time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss these exclusive stories of transformation. Leave a like now. Your support feeds the algorithm and helps spread the love. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. Let us hear your story. And don't wait, not even one more second, to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this transformation too. True fans understand the power of connection.